I teach at a small school in New Mexico, where the unholy rules force us to live in fear. I never should have opened that door. It felt wrong from the moment I stepped into that empty hallway after school. The faint light flickered above me, casting strange shadows that danced along the cracked walls. An unsettling chill wrapped around my shoulders, whispering warnings I chose to ignore. My routine was simple. I'd finish my lessons, pack my bags, and head home. But that day, the sound of soft whispers floated through the air, drawing me toward the door at the end of the hall. Cold sweat trickled down my back. I paused, heart racing. What was that? Just the wind? Or something more sinister? The darkness beyond the door felt alive. I could almost hear it breathing. My stomach twisted. I glanced around, checking for anyone who might help. Just the silence. The walls seemed to close in, begging me to turn back. But curiosity surged. I reached for the knob. Then came the noise. A soft thud, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. I froze. A lump formed in my throat as the whispers grew louder. I could almost make out words, chilling and senseless. Shadows loomed, subtly shifting, lurking just outside of sight. With a trembling hand, I twisted the knob and pushed the door open. A rush of frigid air swept over me, carrying the smell of decay. My senses screamed for me to retreat, but I was caught in a web of dread. As I stepped inside, a faint flicker illuminated the room. Dust particles floated like ghosts. Suddenly, a loud clatter jolted through the silence, echoing in my ears. I jumped back, eyes wide, breath quickening. A chair had fallen, or was it someone? My heart thundered. The whispers turned into shouts, desperate and echoing. Panic clawed at my chest. I couldn't breathe. Just as I turned to flee, something caught my eye, a figure looming in the darkness, twisted and grotesque. A scream lodged in my throat. Then, the door slammed shut behind me. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness enveloped me like a shroud as I pressed my back against the cold, unyielding door. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out the frantic whispers that seemed to swirl around me, probing for my very thoughts. There was something terrible in that room, and I could feel it coiling around my ankles, pulling me closer to the floor, deeper into the shadows. I dared not turn around. I had seen enough, a glimpse of a visage that belonged in nightmares. The twisted face persisted in my mind, the eyes hollow yet burning with an unquenchable hunger. Just as I contemplated my next move, the shrill cacophony of laughter pierced the air, echoing off the walls with an unholy glee. I covered my ears, but that only amplified the sound, reverberating violently within the confines of my skull. In that moment, a low, guttural growl emanated from the depths of the room, cutting through the laughter like a knife. It vibrated through me, a warning. I was not alone. The energies swirling through the space felt malevolent, almost sentient, teasing the edges of my sanity. I glanced at the door, my only option for escape. Behind that barrier, the unknown loomed larger than ever, but I was trapped, a fish in a net crafted from fear. I took a cautious step forward, compelled by a strange curiosity. The faint light penetrated the darkness just enough to illuminate the remains of what was once a classroom. Broken desks lay scattered like casualties in a forgotten war, their surfaces etched with incomprehensible symbols that crawled with unease. A damp chill seeped into my bones as I stepped further, wary of every creak in the floor beneath my feet. As I waded deeper into the desolation, something caught my eye, a tattered notebook lying open on the floor. The pages turned slowly, though there was no wind. The words scrawled upon the paper were blotted and frantic, like the ramblings of a mind unhinged. "It knows," one line read. "You're not safe." I shivered, feeling the prickle of something cold and watching against the back of my neck. Just then, behind me, the shadows seemed to pull back, revealing more of that grotesque figure. It slithered closer, its body writhing in ways that crushed the sanctity of human form. The laughter crescendoed, a symphony of madness, beckoning me to join them in their fate. I turned swiftly, preparing to confront whatever horror was pursuing me. What I saw stole the breath from my lungs. It was not alone. Ghostly forms writhed there, faceless and hollow, weaving a tapestry of despair that outlined their predicament. Students. Teachers. There was no telling. Their mouths moved, echoing the laughter coming from the grotesque figure. They were calling for me. Their hands reached out, pleading and yet tortured, with desperation radiating from their very souls. With a primal scream clawing at my throat, I rushed toward the door, pounding against it with my fists. But it wouldn't yield. It was a solid wall trapping me in the hell of my own curiosity. The laughter echoed more fiercely now, but beneath it, an unholy whisper crawled through the cacophony. "Join us," it cooed, and my skin crawled as a twisted elation bubbled within me, threatening to drown out my will. As I fought against the overpowering urge to succumb, the doors suddenly swung open, revealing not the safety I craved but a corridor that twisted and expanded into an abyss. A horrid realization washed over me. It wasn't the building that was haunted, I was the prey drawn to its wretched heart. With terror fueling every step, I dashed through the doorway into the darkness beyond, the growls and laughter pursuing me like shadows on a hunt. But then the ground trembled beneath me, and the walls began to close in. Just as I thought I had escaped, the grotesque figure appeared again. It loomed right in front of me, closer than it had ever been, its face contorting into an impossibly wide smile filled with sharp teeth. "Stay with us," it hissed, and an icy hand shot out, grasping my wrist like a vice. Then everything went black. The silence was suffocating as I regained my senses, my heart galloping against my ribcage like a caged beast thrashing for freedom. I blinked rapidly, trying to attain clarity amidst the consuming void. Confusion enveloped me like a fog, thick and disorienting. My breath was shallow, punctuated by the memory of that frozen grip clamping down on my wrist, a memory that sparked a fresh wave of terror. Hesitantly, I pushed myself up from the floor, my fingertips grazing unforgivingly cold concrete. The stillness around me was profound, yet beneath it lay a tremor of existence, a pulse that echoed against the walls in rhythm with my own frightened heartbeat. I was disoriented, unsure of how long I had been out. The weight of the darkness was palpable, it pressed down from all directions, consuming every fleeting sense of hope. As I stood, I involuntarily turned my gaze toward where I thought the laughter had come from, but the corridor ahead was deserted. Shadows twisted grotesquely in the corners, alive with their own malevolent energy, teasing what remained of my courage. The air thickened with a clammy chill that filled my lungs with dread. "Why won't you join us?" A voice echoed from the depths of the corridor. It was soft yet insistent, weaving through the silence like a wisp of smoke. I clutched my temples, trying to block out the growing cacophony of whispers that swarmed around me. Panic seized me anew as snippets of words seeped through. Forever, learn, loss, banished. Compelled by a surge of desperation, I stumbled forward. The corridor stretched endlessly, punctuated by doorways that flickered with ominous shadows behind cracked panes of glass, looking like eyes hollow with despair. Each step was a treacherous gamble, a maze designed to ensnare the unwitting. Then, something shifted in the air, a gust, an omen. It didn't feel right. I turned to look back, half expecting to see the grotesque figure looming closer, only to find the corridor vacant. A low hum began to resonate, an unnerving melody crafted from broken voices. It curled around the walls like smoke, urging me to follow, guiding me further into an abyss the school had become. I fled blindly, living each moment in sheer terror. At intervals, faint outlines of figures appeared, lingering in doorways vaguely familiar, yet twisted in a way that sent shivers down my spine. They whispered my name, almost unintelligibly, haunting echoes resonating with pain that clawed at my resolve. "Help us, save us," the voices intertwined, creating a chorus, a sacrilegious hymn that beckoned from the darkness. I pressed forward, fighting the urge to reach out, to cradle their desperation. The corridor seemed to warp, stretching and contracting, twisting in upon itself like a living thing. And then, from behind a door that splintered at the edges, I saw it one thing that gnawed at the farthest recess of my sanity. A classroom, drowned in somber light, with small desks and tattered chairs arranged in disarray. The air was thick with an oppressive sadness, so heavy it felt tangible. It was the very classroom I had tried to escape. I felt a tugging force drawing me back, an almost magnetic pull toward the heart of this torment. I could taste the coppery bitterness of fear flooding my mouth as I stepped inside, the door slamming shut behind me with finality as if sealing my fate. The eyes of the forsaken students fixated on me, empty yet full of longing. Their mouths moved in unison, forming slow, agonizing syllables of a chant meant to awaken the ash of their memories. I strained to hear their words, but all I grasped was despair. "Join us," they murmured, and in that instant, I felt the pinprick of nails digging into the skin of my wrist, the echo of that icy hand returning. I jerked my arm away, but there was no one there. The laughter surged in response to my fear, but it was intermingled with cries of pain and sorrow, and the very foundation of this dreadful place trembled under its weight. Suddenly, a figure stepped from the corner of that wretched classroom, cloaked in twisting shadows. It wore the face of someone I once knew, someone I had lost. Their eyes burrowed deep into mine, burning with an unbearable longing and an accusation that pierced my aching heart. "Why did you leave me?" they wailed, their voice curling around me like a serpent. The walls began to close in again, reverberating as if the building itself was alive and grieving, writhing under the weight of choked silence. As I opened my mouth to answer, to scream, the lights flickered violently around me. I realized, yet again, I was ensnared within a masterful trap where reality and nightmare coalesced. And just as it seemed the darkness would swallow me whole, a wooden desk splintered apart, revealing an ancient tome concealed within. It laid open to reveal a horrific truth that twisted my stomach, a dark pact made in blood, binding the souls of the lost to this cursed ground. That I reached out instinctively, fingers trembling as they hovered over the yellowed pages, just as a chilling voice whispered from the shadows, "You must make a choice or succumb to the darkness forever." And before I could comprehend the depth of those words, the figure lunged forward, and the room erupted into chaos. The walls trembled violently, the laughter crescendoing into an unbearable roar. Then all at once, silence enveloped me, and the chilling whisper returned, clawing at my being, "Choose." The room plunged into darkness, and I froze, rooted by fear. When the light returned, nothing remained. No classroom, no entities, just an endless void swirling around me. But I wasn't alone. Shadows moved like smoke, and low, guttural growls began to circle closer. "Choose." the darkness urged again, an ultimatum echoing in the vast emptiness, as the shadows converged, hungry for my decision. I felt their presence closing in on me, chilling and oppressive, but before I could comprehend what lay ahead, the ground beneath me suddenly crumbled away. And I fell deeper into the void, into their waiting arms. The descent into darkness was both a relief and a terror, my body slipping into a chilling embrace that threatened to engulf me whole. The shadows surrounded me like a cloak of dread, a shroud woven with the cries of those long lost. Time lost all meaning, stretching and warping as I spiraled deeper into the abyss. Voices broke through the silence, murmurs of torment and despair swirling around like leaves in a storm. "Join us, become one with us," they chanted, each syllable dripping with anguish. The inky darkness shifted as I fell, revealing distorted faces formed from the shadows, their features twisted in expressions of eternal grief. I reached for them, yearning for recognition, but their smiles turned to grimaces as they melted away like mist. They were whispers of the damned, lost souls that had strayed too far from the light, and I was no more than a fleeting shadow among them. Just when I thought I would fall forever, the ground solidified beneath me, jolting me awake as though the very fabric of reality had relocated. I landed with a thud in a dismal hall, dimly lit by flickering lights that buzzed like angry hornets. The room pulsed with an energy that covered my skin in goosebumps, an omnipresent dread. Around me, panes of glass lined the walls, each one reflecting a different version of myself. Some wore masks of fear, while others bore grim smiles that seemed to mock my confusion. Each reflection was a cruel reminder of choice's heavy weight, a mirrored gallery of paths I'd walked: honor and shame, love and loss, freedom and binding. Why are you here? A voice slipped through like a sliver of ice, penetrating the mind and wrapping around the soul. I spun, instinctively bracing myself against the cold, hard wall. A figure emerged from a patch of dimness, stepping forward from the shadows that seemed drawn to them like moths to a flame. It was a familiar silhouette, yet marred by an otherworldly aura that sent shivers darting down my spine. Leave now, before it consumes you too, the figure urged, eyes glinting with unearthly light, a haunting reflection of someone dear. The warmth of recognition was crushed beneath an avalanche of dread. Is this real? I whispered, grappling with the haunting weight of my own words, my own mind. Is this a dream, real? Dream? What is real, if not this? They gestured grandly toward the ever-shifting maze of shadows. You have to choose before the darkness finds you again. The ground trembled beneath my feet as I glanced around, absorbing the chaos unraveling on every side. Words from the classroom echoed back, their chilling mantra entwined with a new voice that lurked just beyond my reach. Choice, the voice taunted, mocking the myriad paths swirling in my mind. You must decide, and the consequences shall be yours to bear. Join them or stand alone. All things, even memories, must be paid for. Who are you? I gasped, my voice barely breaking through the choking urgency of the moment. The figure's smile faltered into a pained grimace. I am a part of this place, as are you now. As was I, remember me? The boundaries between us blur. You were drawn here for a reason, like a moth to the flame. But the choice isn't yours alone. With a wave of their hand, the reflections in the glass warped and twisted, revealing a path paved with memories I'd fought desperately to forget. Faces of friends and family faded into gruesome depictions of loss, despair trailing behind them like a ghost's cloak. Each visage spoke to me, a cacophony harmonizing with the whispers of torment wrapping around my throat. Squeezing tighter, choose the past, the voice beckoned, fingers gliding against the glass. Choose them. Or choose the darkness. It's all you've ever known. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, fragments of the floor splintering away, revealing yawning chasms leading down into fathomless depths. Dread surged as tendrils of shadow shot up, reaching for me with an insatiable hunger. Panic surged in my chest like bile, choking me. Was this the end? Was I to join those forsaken in the depths below? Choose. They screamed. Or be devoured by the void that hungers. I staggered back, caught between the ghost of hope and the crushing weight of despair mingling in the air. My heart raced in my chest, pounding out a desperate plea. The taunts echoed, swirling around me, merging with my own thoughts. I felt a cold gust sweep through the room, snatching the air from my lungs as the glass reflections shifted again. One figure stood out, bathed in a sickly green light leaking through cracks in the walls. It beckoned for me, promising warmth and solace, but as I reached out, it twisted into a clawing maw, ready to drag me down. Choose, it screeched, the voice rising to a howl. Or face the darkness, unite. I was caught in a cyclone of horrendous decisions, the shadows tightening their grip, when I noticed a glimmer in the far corner of the room, a silver key poised delicately in the shattered remains of a desk. It shone with an eerie light, my heart racing with the possibility it might unlock my escape, but as I lunged for it, the shadows surged with a hunger, arms reaching, fingers curling around my limbs, their choking grip relentless. In that moment, desperation became a fire, and I felt the weight of the choice crashing down. I had to seize the key or succumb to the void. That a shattering scream erupted from my throat just as I grasped the key, and the world around me exploded in a blinding flash. I was thrown backward into a maelstrom of tumult, engulfed in chaos as the laughter returned to an unbearable crescendo, the whispers clawing at my sanity. Choose now, and then, the lights flickered and died, plunging me into an all-consuming darkness, where a new horror awaited. As the impenetrable darkness closed around me, I could feel my mind beginning to unravel, panic seeping into the very marrow of my bones. I grasped the key tightly, the cold metal biting into my palm, an anchor in the swirling void. The silence was deafening, broken only by the frantic beating of my heart, a drum heralding the arrival of something insidious. The shadows writhed and shifted, whispering promises of eternal torment, hissing secrets I dared not decipher. They pulsed with life, brushing against my skin like icy fingers coaxing me towards a fate less desirable than death. I felt their longing, their desperation, and a sick realization washed over me. This was not just my suffering, it was a collective pain, an agony shared with the lost souls interred within the confines of this haunted expanse. The vibrations of despair gathered strength, throbbing in the atmosphere as the darkness began to pulse with a sentient rhythm, pushing back against the key I held aloft. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to succumb to the gravity of my fears, to join in the chorus of longing that echoed through the abyss. "Unlock it," hissed a voice, sharp and mocking. "You think you can escape? You're just as lost as we are." I clenched my teeth, envisioning the silvery key as a weapon not just against the darkness, but against my own crippling indecision. If I could unlock the door to whatever lay beyond this cursed hall, perhaps I could reclaim a sliver of sanity. Or perhaps, I would plunge deeper into the nightmarish landscape, and the shadows craved an offering far more precious than just my life. In that moment of resolve, I found my bearings, eyes burning through the darkness, searching for the door, the lock, all while the shadows coiled around my legs like serpents, pulling me down into their lair. With uncertainty clawing at my heart, I staggered forward, each step a battle against the sinister forces that yearned to claim me. The cacophony of murmurs grew frenzied, echoes of laughter thrumming around me like a horror-infused symphony. I could almost hear their thoughts, a chorus that echoed the regrets and pain of countless souls trapped within the crumbling school walls. I could see them now, twisted forms illuminated by stray rays of grayish light, eyes gleaming with a wicked sheen. They reached for me, fingers outstretched, mouths whispering warnings, or perhaps encouragement. It was impossible to tell. Then I spotted its door, a warped slab of wood, ancient and decrepit. Blackened vines snaked around the frame, pulsating rhythmically as though bound by a heartbeat of their own. I approached it, trembling but determined. My breath caught in my throat as I dared to place the key within the lock. "Open it. End our suffering," they screamed now, their voices merging into a singular, spine-chilling wail that made my chest tighten. With an agonizing twist, the key clicked, an unsettling sound that reverberated through the endless void. I hesitated for just a heartbeat, caught in the tension of that moment between decision and consequence, before twisting it further. And then, the door shuddered violently, as though responding to the darkness that was enraged by my resolve. The heavy door creaked, sunlight spilling through the crack and illuminating the twisted forms momentarily, just long enough for me to glimpse their gnarled faces, their mouths agape in frozen screams as if despair itself had manifested into wretched visages. But the instant the door broke free from its haunt, the furious cries exploded once more, and what lay beyond the threshold tore at my mind. Blinding light surged forth, illuminating a corridor bathed in an unnatural brightness. But it wasn't any ordinary light. It was an agonized brilliance, laced with hues of agony and despair, casting long shadows that reached towards me, fingers reaching with insidious intent. "Come back." A harmonious voice, so beautiful and haunting, pierced through the chaos. You must not step through, but I could not turn away then. The awful reality ahead tugged at my essence. If I turned back to the darkness, it might just devour me whole. With a deep, shaky breath filled with resolve, I plunged into the shaft of light. Immediately, it enveloped me, choking with invasive warmth like fire licking at my skin, searing my very spirit. A malevolent laugh echoed behind me, a sound so familiar yet monstrous, soaring through the air as I felt the ground give way beneath my feet. The shadows and laments were silenced, replaced by the distant sounds of children's laughter and the deep, resonant echo of a school bell ringing, a sound that promised either salvation or deeper horrors. But before I could process this, a figure loomed in the light, casting an elongated shadow of abject dread. It was an entity that stood tall and imposing, wearing the familiar face of my childhood mentor, transformed into something grotesque. The kindness I once knew in those eyes was utterly replaced by a malevolence that chilled my soul. "Welcome back, dear student," it intoned, voice smooth as silk yet cutting as glass. "I was just waiting for you to choose." And with that, the light began to twist and warp, revealing not an escape but the unholy nexus of fear I unknowingly grew to call home. The walls trembled around me, the air thick with a palpable dread that seeped into my very being. I stood frozen, the deceptive visage of my mentor morphing into a tangled web of memories and nightmares, their horror dawning upon me like the glow of fluorescent lights in a darkened room. The laughter of children twisted into echoes of mockery, their faces blurring into distorted, accusatory shapes that flitted just beyond the edge of my vision. "Why did you come back?" the figure asked, the voice dripping with false sweetness. "You were safe in the Shadowsa haven among the lost." That I stepped back instinctively, trying to recall the warmth that had once radiated from that kind face. I only wanted to help. I stammered, as fragments of my past rushed forth, the lessons taught under flickering lights, the calm reassurance that had cradled my doubt. But all that remained now was a frigid emptiness swirling in the bright surroundings. "Help." It chuckled, each syllable steeped in dark mirth. "Help is a fickle thing, it requires a price." Suddenly, the gleaming light shifted, revealing grotesque murals painted on the previously unknown walls, vivid scenes of students trapped in endless loops of terror, hands reaching for help, eyes wide with horror, faces contorted in fear. My heart sank as I recognized their expressions, their hopelessness mirroring my own. "Look closer," my mentor beckoned, stepping into the illumination, casting shadows deeper than the darkest pit. "These are your classmates, dear. Their spirits cannot escape without a guide. They need you." Panic gripped me as their wails harmonized with the chimes of the school bell, now a monster's roar demanding attention, each toll digging into the fragile remains of my sanity. I turned, but the doorway through which I'd arrived was now a solid wall, pulsating with an unholy heartbeat, a membrane of darkness refusing my flight. "Join them," the figure urged, its voice taking on a hauntingly hypnotic cadence. "Become one of us. You have the power to release them, to teach them. After all, we are all prisoners of our choices here." My throat tightened as I felt the weight of unseen eyes upon me. The trapped souls, their cloaked forms gathering in the shadows, began to whisper in unison. "Save us. End this." They cried, their voices twining together in a deluge of despair that made my pulse race. I could see flickers of their features, fragmented faces reflecting the intangible burdens they carried. "Don't listen to them," the figure hissed, its form morphing to exude an ominous intensity. "They are nothing without you. You hold their fate." It spun toward the gathering shadows, revealing tendrils of black coiling around the children's spirits. The more I looked, the more I recognized them, each silhouette marked by pain and suffering, twisting in an agonizing dance under the malevolent pull of the twisted mentor. I could feel my resolve crumbling beneath the weight of their collective plea. "No. I won't be part of this," I shouted, my voice torn between desperation and defiance. I darted backward, desperate to escape the grasp of both the figure and the pleading souls. "Foolish child," it screeched, unveiling a hideous grin that split its face, revealing teeth blacker than coal. "Do you think defiance will free you? You need the darkness to find your way." The walls pulsed in tandem with my racing heart, and for a moment, I was suspended in chaos. Figures lurked just outside my periphery, whispering forgotten tales that stirred within me a nauseating familiarity. The ground beneath me vibrated, shuddering warnings that knotted in my gut. I realized then what I had to do. I had to confront the darkness within myself, to teach them, to learn from the damned. As if reading my mind, the figure perked up, a flicker of excitement tracing its features. "You see. Embrace it, and you can mold the shadows. Show them your will." A rush of swirling despair engulfed me, and the searing light around me flickered wildly like a candle about to be blown out. The frantic laughter of children filled my ears again, morphing into shrill cries of terror that clawed at me from every direction. "Release us." They wailed together, their voices merging into an unbearable crescendo, demanding my surrender. "Teach us to be free." The floor trembled violently, shadows reaching upward in a desperate embrace, and in that chaotic moment, my resolve shattered. The laughter turned sinister, a cacophony of glee that sent chills racing down my spine. "No. Fight it." A sharp voice broke through the din, piercing my despair, a frantic cry that chilled me to the bone. I turned to see not my mentor's twisted grin, but a familiar face emerging from the light, eyes wide and pleading, "Don't listen to them." My childhood friend screamed, stepping forward, but a suffocating shadow lunged from the darkness, silencing her voice abruptly. The world around me shuddered, turning in on itself, a massive vortex of fear threatening to swallow everything whole, and in that moment of horrifying clarity, I recognized the one truth: I was no longer sure where I began or where the shadows ended. As the grasp of darkness tightened around us, I knew we were all bound by secrets, and the school would never release its hold on those entangled in its horrors. Just as the shadows lunged for me, I heard a whisper beneath the chaos, promising release through betrayal, and everything snapped, the chasm of darkness swallowing my heart whole. And then there was a scream. My scream. Or hers. I could no longer tell. The silence that followed was punctuated only by the hissing breath of the shadows. I was thrown into a deep, inky darkness, the lack of any sensation nearly suffocating. For a moment, I was weightless, spiraling into an abyss where sound lost meaning and time had no grip. Then, the unmistakable chill of reality crushed in around me, disorienting and cruel. Curling myself into a ball, I braced for impact, my trembling body colliding with something hard and cold. I gasped as I came crashing to the ground, a damp, musty floor coated in a layer of grime. The air tasted of decay, raw and heavy, and as I sat up, the sting of mildew filled my nostrils. My heart raced as adrenaline coursed through my veins, igniting a frantic need to escape. Panic settled in, but desperation propelled me forward. I glanced around, desperate for any sign of hope, but the space enveloping me was an endless labyrinth of straining shadows, their twisting forms slithering along the walls like predatory serpents. Dim light flickered overhead, revealing scuttling shapes nestled in the corners of this sinister world. Lost souls, I instantly recognized. Help us. The echoes of my classmates found me again, their distorted pleas resonating from all corners, gnawing at my sanity. The flickering shadows began reshaping, forming grotesque depictions of faces I once knew. Laughter morphed into sobs, as cries of despair mixed with grotesque, nightmarish parodies of the friendships we had once shared. "Where are you?" I shouted, my voice trembling, attempting to cling to the solidarity of those I had lost. "What do you want from me? You should know by now." The figure of my mentor's twisted visage emerged, this time more corporeal, stepping into the hazy light. "You have the gift to teach." To mold. With horror, I realized it was not just my classmates trapped within this purgatory, but friends turned shadow, extracts of their former selves desperately reaching through the veil of existence. "Release us!" they wailed, eyes wide in agonized desperation, trapped by an endless cycle of guilt and sorrow. The oppressive presence of my mentor surged beside them, urging me forward. "You can be more than a mere spectator. It's your time to lead them, to empower them. Why keep them shackled to the pain? Pain is all they have left." I spat, clutching my head, the din around me swelling. "I won't lead them into darkness," but even as I spoke, I felt the draw of the shadows whisper through my thoughts, pulling me closer to their depths. A seductive promise swirled around me, its magic heavy and intoxicating, each word promising wisdom as ancient as the stones beneath me. I could feel the walls pulsing with energy, thrumming with the presence of countless souls seeking release. Suddenly, the ground rippled beneath me, and from the darkness emerged an orb of blinding light. It hovered just before me, and with it, visions stirred, a series of events, memories, and twisted interpretations of what had laid hidden in the very essence of this place. Horrific images flared through my consciousness, faces of the lost I had witnessed in life, their eyes glossed over in darkness and despair. They were united in silence now, their cries muted, yet their potential for agony alive with an electric charge. A voice, soft yet demanding, echoed within the confines of my mind, a reflection of my own whispered desperation. "You can set them free. All it takes is a choice, your choice." That I staggered back, gripping the cool floorboard beneath me as doubt gnawed at my soul. And then I realized beneath the clamor of fear and tethered souls, one figure stood apart, cloaked in shadow yet emanating pure, unwavering light. It was my friend, her silhouette radiant amid the gloom, urging me closer with fearful eyes, full of sorrow. "Don't give in," she implored, hands outstretched against the tide of darkness swirling. Remember who you are. Don't forsake us. They want to consume you." The shadows trembled at her words, dark tendrils snapping in protest. I had to decide: join the laughter in the darkness and risk becoming another lost soul, or resist. Battling the consuming force that promised reprieve. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the tendrils, the walls vibrating violently as if the school itself was alive and hungry. The orb of light intensified, illuminating the faces of those I thought I had lost, their horror morphing into rage, advancing relentlessly toward me. "Choose!" roared my mentor, the twisted smile stretching across its face, growing ever wider like a fissure. "The shadows are your only allies. They sing of salvation." The ground shook again, and in that moment of heart-stopping chaos, a wild, desperate choice strained against the corners of my mind. I could feel the seed of betrayal crackling at the surface, became acutely aware that the price of freedom might unearth a horror greater than the shadows themselves. Time slowed, hearts raced, and in the cacophony of swirling darkness and flickering fears, I was heartbeat away from either drowning in despair or reaching for the light. Just as my hand shot toward the orb and betrayal began to bloom, the floor erupted beneath me, the very foundation of the school fracturing like glass, unraveling into a void of shadow, and everything spun wildly into nothingness, and then, silence. The kind of dreadful silence that follows an awakening, yet I could still sense the wandering souls pressing against the edges of my consciousness, their chilling whispers lingering just beyond reach, as if waiting for me to reclaim the remnants of hope or surrender to unending night. The choice, trembling in the dark, hung suspended like a noose around my neck. But in that moment, as light flickered and shadows collapsed, I realized with a bone-chilling jolt I wasn't alone. I never had been. The ground beneath me ripped open, and with a horrifying roar, the fear-filled faces lunged. I felt the weight of despair crash upon me as the faces of my former classmates lunged from the depths of the abyss. Eyes wide with terror and mouths agape in screams that echoed within my soul, they rushed forward like ravenous apparitions, the air thickening with their fevered entreaties for salvation. No. "Stop!" I shrieked as I stumbled backward, the ground churning like boiling water. No stable footing remained, just the nightmarish dance of those consumed by shadows, clawing and grasping with desperate longing. I had never felt so utterly powerless, shackled by an invisible force weaving through the madness threatening to envelop me. "Help us! Help us!" they cried, their voices merging into a horrifying cacophony, each tone laced with anguish and desperation. I turned and ran, the very tendrils of darkness pulling at my heels, eager to reclaim what I had fought to leave behind. I could feel them grazing the skin of my ankles, whispering to me in seductive tones, beckoning me into their depths. That I darted toward an opening in the wall, where a faint glimmer of silvery light seeped through the cracks. It grew larger as I approached, hope shimmering in my heart, but just as quickly, it flickered violently, reminding me of the fragile line I was walking. "Don't let them pull you into the dark," my friend's voice broke through, so clear, so vibrant against the tide of despair. She appeared, not just as a flicker of light but manifesting before me, her image shimmering with raw defiance, like a lighthouse cutting through a storm. "Fight!" she urged, her eyes fierce and unwavering. "You have to fight." With her encouragement, I summoned every ounce of strength within myself. I could feel the shadows closing in, their whispers clawing at the recesses of my mind. "You could be one of us," they hissed seductively, "embrace us. No more pain. No more longing." But I thought of her, of the laughter we had shared, the memories that had turned to dust within this hell. I imagined her smile, her warmth, and the pure love that had anchored me to life even when the darkness threatened our very being. Ignoring the shadows that pulled at my heart like an anchor, I thrust out my hands, reaching for the luminous barrier. "No. I reject you!" I shouted with all the defiance I could muster. The light surged at my command, splintering the shadows that swirled around me, causing the shapes to recoil as if burned. In that heart-stopping moment, I felt a connection to something greater, a power not just to escape, but to save. I could feel the shadows shrinking back, the cries of my classmates turning from rage to muffled confusion, but the relief was fleeting. With a deafening roar, the ground shifted violently again, and the trembling fractured into chaos. The orb of light burst outwards, casting the darkness into a brilliant tempest of flickering flames and ash. I felt the pull of the shadows intensify, their chilling grasp returning with a vengeance. Choose your side. The shadow of my mentor loomed over me, now a grotesque amalgam twisted and warped, radiating malice. It surged forward, and a wave of icy dread swept through me, threatening to drown any flicker of defiance that had dared rise in my heart. With terrified urgency, I clutched at the light, desperate to draw from its essence, to pierce through the veil of despair. I would not be like them. I would not fall, but then I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, shadows merging, gathering strength, and forming a figure that froze my blood. It was my friend, her radiant silhouette now encased in darkness, as if the very shadows had devoured her light. No! I screamed, lunging toward her, but the space between us warped, and suddenly, I couldn't reach her, couldn't pull her back from the brink. Fight it. Remember who you are. The shadows around her began to intertwine with her, snake-like tendrils wrapping around her limbs, pulling her into their embrace, swapping light for shadow. I felt my heart split, terror coursing through me like poison as she struggled, tears brimming in her eyes, fighting a losing battle. Against the encroaching darkness. Save them. Save us both. She cried just before the shadows engulfed her. A piercing wail erupted as she vanished, the sound a forlorn echo of despair reverberating through the depths of my consciousness. That I stood there, trembling, my resolve diminishing as I turned back to the fractured landscape around me. The faces of my classmates morphed into something grotesque, eyes alight with a feverish frenzy for vengeance, reflections of their anguish warping into an unholy promise of what lay ahead. And then, before I could process the horror unfolding, I felt a rush of cold air burst forth, and the shadows parted. Directly in front of me loomed a portal, a swirling maw of unearthly darkness. It beckoned, whispering sweet thoughts of freedom from the pain that pressed against me, promising safety in exchange for my soul. That I was at the final precipice, a realm suspended between hope and despair, between light and a darkness so profound it threatened to swallow the very existence of everything I had known. The shadows danced around the edges of the portal, eager and ravenous. Just as I turned toward it, a voice, low and sinister, crawled into my thoughts. You still have a choice to make. But beware, there are secrets you do not know, horrors that go deeper than betrayal. That I, in the depths of my frozen heart, a twisted sense of dread rooted itself. In that moment, I understood I would either walk into the darkness or perhaps become the very thing I feared most. I felt their eyes boring into me, the weight of the fate of my friends pressing heavily upon my shoulders. And just as I stepped toward the portal of shadows, it flickered, revealing formless shapes swirling violently within a maelstrom of voices I recognized, cries wrapped in terror, promising everything I thought I had lost. But I hadn't noticed the figure behind me, mentor, his eyes burning with an insatiable hunger, standing just a breath away. His twisted smile grew larger, dark shadows coiling around him like vipers, ready to strike. Why choose, when you can have it all? He hissed, and suddenly I felt a sharp pain in my heart as the shadows lunged forward, whispering promises I could almost believe. As darkness threatened to sweep me away, I realized this was not just about my salvation, it was about theirs, too. And against my better judgment, I recognized the horrifying truth: this wasn't a fight for my life, it was a fight for my very soul and the souls of everyone bound to this unholy prison. With a final glance into the portal, I took a step backward, bracing for the mess that lay ahead. But before I could gather my thoughts, the entire world around me exploded into chaos, the veil of reality tearing apart like fragile fabric, and then, silence. A silence that was palpably heavy, a tension that felt like a winding coil about to snap. In that moment of stillness, I sensed a new presence stirring, an entity of the darkness, whispering, creeping closer, and as shadows converged with vicious intent, something began to emerge from the tortured depths. The ground beneath me began quaking again, and at that moment I realized with a bone-chilling clarity that I was far from finished. The horror that awaited wasn't merely a choice, it was a reckoning. And then it stepped into the light, revealing an old, twisted version of myself entwined with the haunting echoes of every lost soul around me. I staggered back, my breath hitching in my throat as the twisted reflection of myself grinned back at me. Each wrinkle in its skin seemed to echo the despair I felt, the shadows clinging to it like cling film. I tried to shake the dread creeping into my veins. This was no mere specter of the past, it was a manifestation of my guilt, my deepest fears come to life. The worn-down visage of who I might become, if I succumb to the darkness. Why fight, when you can join? It cooed, its voice a dark lullaby that echoed painfully like my friend's last desperate cries. They are trapped, just like you. We share a bond unbreakable. Release the weight of your sorrow and live without chains. My hands trembled, and I pressed them against my temples, trying to drown the seductive calls that seeped into my consciousness. Am not you? I shouted, but even as I uttered the words, doubt crawled through me, clawing at my resolve. The straightforward light had vanished, leaving only shadows, and within them was all I had ever feared, becoming trapped in a relentless cycle of regret. Around me, the portal throbbed with an insatiable hunger, the faces of the lost swirling like a tempest. Their eyes flickered with a hint of recognition, they were pleading for resurrection while simultaneously reaching for the unfathomable void from which I had emerged. Noise filled the air, a jarring blend of their wails and soft laughter, a reminder that they desired something far darker than salvation. They craved company in their perdition. As the twisted version of myself stepped forward, the shadows receded just enough for me to glimpse the horrors that loomed within the portal, a tangle of arms and legs swirling helplessly, each appendage grasping at memories I once cherished. I thought of my friend, of the laughter we shared, and of the searing anguish that threatened to drown me at her loss. Do you not wish to free them? The dark reflection urged, inching closer, its eyes glinting with malice. Join me, and we will bring them forth from their suffering. We are not trapped, we are destined to obliterate the very fabric of reality. Embrace the hunger. No. I cried, stumbling back, panic tightening my chest. But it was no use, the shadows thickened around me, curling like smoke, seducing me with possibilities, their whispers intoxicating. Join them, be free, they coaxed, wrapping tighter, threatening to smother my thoughts. Suddenly, the ground vibrated violently beneath me, shaking apart the tenuous grip I had on sanity. I gasped as fragments of reality shattered like glass, reforming into silhouettes that moved with dark purpose. A chorus of my classmates and friends, now twisted beings with hollow eyes and gaping mouths, their cries reassigned to mournful shrieks of what they had become. The teacher I once admired slithered through the shadows, his form grotesque and distorted, melding with the essence of anguish that permeated the air. You cannot escape us, he hissed, each syllable a dagger cutting through the veil of hope I desperately clung to. Join us. Together, we will unleash the chaos that festers within. Every fiber of my being screamed to flee from this abomination, to break free of the chains binding me not just to this nightmarish landscape but to the anguish that now echoed around me. Louder and more urgent than I and the swirling darkness, I felt tendrils of despair brush against my skin, searching for weaknesses to exploit. I had glimpsed the fate of my friends, their light extinguished, souls ensnared in these horrific forms. And what of me? What lay beyond this precipice was a fate worse than death, a lifetime of darkness that could consume not only me but everyone I held dear. Summoning every ounce of strength, I fixed my gaze on my dark reflection. You are not me. You will never be me. I yelled, asserting my will against the tide of despair, but as I screamed, the shadows recoiled, revealing a flicker of hesitant light that surged from the depths of the portal, an ember that rivaled the ache of loss in my chest. It pulsed rhythmically, an echo of the heartbeat I thought could never be shared again. Save us, a voice whispered from the portal, a familiar timbre laced with pain. I looked closer and saw her, a ghostly silhouette of my friend, her expression a mix of fear and resolve, urging me to rescue her from the clutches of the ever-encroaching night. Don't listen to them. She reached out, her fingers almost brushing against mine across the forbidden threshold. But the shadows hissed, jagged claws reaching forth to reclaim their prize. You must make a choice. Embrace the darkness or save us both. The weight of their desperate cries surged into a fever pitch, collective anguish clawing at the edges of my sanity, and I felt myself slipping toward the final chasm of the unknown. With my heart racing, I bolted towards her, every nerve igniting with the hope of salvation, but just as my fingertips grazed the light's edge, the dark version of myself lunged forward, blocking me with an outstretched arm that crackled with shadow. Fool! You cannot save them. You will only become one of us. Just as I was torn between the light of my friend and the encroaching darkness, the ground ruptured, splitting wide open beneath me, and I was thrown into the void. The shadowy grasp of despair clung to my limbs as I succumbed to the fall, the faces of lost friends morphing into horrific masks of laughter and howls, a haunting serenade that reverberated through the depths of my being. As I tumbled deeper into the abyss, terror overrode reason. I was not merely falling, I was diving headfirst into an expanse of torment from which there might be no return. And through the cacophony of cries, I heard my mentor calling with an unsettling familiarity, "You've always been destined for this, dear student, come home." The fragility of my existence shimmered around me. My soul teetered on the brink, a choice made in a fraction of a moment that would change everything. In that harrowing embrace of darkness, I felt the pull, the vividness of the light fading until something even deeper stirred. What awaited me at the bottom of this conflagration? Was I destined to merge with the shadows, or were there truths yet uncovered within the abyss? As the next second stretched into eternity, I realized, with cold clarity, that I was on the edge of an unspeakable discovery or my utter doom. I awoke, not to the flickering lights of a classroom or the stifling embrace of shadows, but to a pristine sunlit morning. A faint breeze ruffled the curtain by the window, wrapping warmth around me like a familiar shroud. I blinked in disbelief as I sat up in my own bed, the faint smell of fresh coffee wafting through the air. It felt unreal, intoxicating Avena comfort I hadn't felt in what seemed like eternity. But in my heart lay a gnawing thread of doubt. Had it all been a dream? I pushed myself up, glancing around my room, every familiar object whispering remnants of a life I thought lost, yet, as I padded toward the kitchen, a deep, instinctive dread thrummed beneath the surface of my euphoria. The world seemed quieter than it should, and even the breeze carried a chill that sent shivers down my spine. A sensation of eyes boring into me made the hairs rise on the back of my neck, but I shook it off, mentally sighing at my overactive imagination. It was time to embrace life, to regain a sense of normalcy, whatever that meant. After the horror I'd endured in the kitchen, I poured myself a cup of coffee, fingers trembling slightly, and peered out at the morning sun that flooded the world outside. Everything seemed untouched. Birds chirped, children laughed in the distance, it all felt vibrant, alive. But my heart skipped with a panicked thrum as I noticed something flickering at the edge of my vision, a shadow lurking in the corner of the yard. I turned, but it was gone. "Just relax," I muttered to myself, forcing a breath, even as the remnants of the darkness clung to my mind. I had chosen, survived, escaped. I resolved not to let fear chain me again. With a half-hearted smile, I focused on the sight of the neighborhood, a sanctuary bathed in sunlight, and then, like an unexpected bolt of lightning, laughter broke through the ordinary, rocking my world once again. I followed the sound outside to find a cluster of children playing, mirroring the visions that had tormented me for so long. My breath hitched as I recognized a face, a familiar silhouette tumbling with carefree gleamy friend, the one I had fought so hard to save. That I whispered to myself, heart racing. But it was more than mere familiarity, it was her, hovering close, her laughter tinkling like wind chimes against the suffocating silence that had shadowed my life. Yet something felt deeply wrong. The laughter was hollow, an echo from somewhere dark, ribbed with a sickening pitch that caused my stomach to churn. "You came back. You came back." My friend called out, although her face seemed slightly off, her edges blended and blurred under the sunlight. "Back?" I stepped closer, incredulous. "But how? Are you real?" The others turned, their faces painted with an unsettling joy, mouth stretching wider, but the gleam in their eyes held shadow-shallowed, hungry shadows. "We're free. Join us." They chirped, beckoning me toward something beneath the shadow of the trees. Suddenly, a realization hammered against my brain, a chilling awareness stealing the warmth from the day. I staggered back, the truth clawing through the fantasies I had clung to, burying me deeper in horror. These weren't mere children, they were echoes of the lives devoured within the school, souls I had thought long lost to the darkness. No. I cried, panic gripping my heart. "I saw you. You were trapped with me." The laughter erupted once more, twisted and derisive, shattering the illusion of normalcy that had held me captive. "Trapped? We are free now," they sang, circling around me, a chorus of the forsaken united in dark ecstasy. The air thickened as the realization clawed deeper. This isn't freedom. I yelled. This is the darkness. You're still join us, join us. They chanted, their voices shifting, blending, growing more frenzied, thrumming with sinister anticipation. You made the choice be a part of us forever, and so it poured into me in waves, the warmth of familiarity crashing against the bitter, sharp edges of truth. I had escaped the school, but it had tethered its darkened essence to me still. The laughter now became weighty, binding, blood-soaked memories resurrecting every horror I had witnessed. Just as I turned to flee, shadows erupted from the very ground, snaking around my ankles, drawing me back into that cursed realm. I screamed, heart pounding, as my past enveloped me, desperate fingers pulling me into a maw of horror concealed beneath the light of day, but there remained one truth pounding in my brain, declaring itself louder than any other thought. I had escaped, but darkness lingered always, intertwining with every fiber of my being, clawing for dominance never truly relinquished, forever bound to my soul. As the laughter continued to rise, a malevolent echo that would haunt my heart forevermore, the last thing I saw before the world consumed me was my friend's face morphing into the very essence of the school, twisted, screaming, yet begging for me to join in their eternal unrest. Welcome back, the chorus sang sweetly behind me, its enticing voice merging with the scornful laughter of curse-bound souls as I faded into their collective nightmare, a never-ending lesson that enlightenment lies not in escape, but in acceptance of the darkness that blooms within us all. And then came the horrifying realization, echoing in the confines of my mind: there is no true escape from the darkness, it always lingers, waiting patiently for the next moment of weakness.